Nathan Foster hated Mondays. The lab at Horizon Biomedical always seemed colder after the weekend, and today the rain pounding against the windows made everything feel more dreary than usual. He adjusted his lab coat and peered through his microscope at the blood sample on the slide. 8 hours of this. 8 hours of looking at strangers' blood, cataloging abnormalities, and filing reports that would disappear into the vast database of Horizon Biomedical. The irony wasn't lost on him. A man who got dizzy at the sight of his own blood spent his days surrounded by vials of the stuff. "Hey, Nathan, you got those results from batch 6 yet?" Nathan looked up to see Kyle, his supervisor, standing in the doorway. Kyle was always in a hurry, always expecting results yesterday. "Almost done. Give me 10 minutes, Nathan replied, typing notes into his terminal. Kyle nodded and disappeared back into the hallway. Nathan sighed and returned to his work. 3 years at Horizon, and he still felt like he was starting over every day. The divorce last year hadn't helped. Allison had taken their apartment and most of their friends in the split, leaving Nathan with a small studio apartment and a life that felt emptier than he cared to admit. The clock on the wall ticked toward lunch. Nathan finished the last sample and logged his findings before heading to the break room. He unwrapped his sandwich and scrolled through his phone, not really reading anything, just avoiding the silence. "Mind if I join you?" Nathan looked up to see Olivia Chen, one of the research assistants from the 3rd floor. They'd spoken a few times at company events, but never much beyond small talk. "Sure," he said, moving his lunch bag to make room. "Heard you're working on the Anderson project now," she said, opening her salad container. Nathan nodded. "Just started last week. Mostly baseline work so far." "That's a big deal. Not many people get clearance for that floor." Nathan shrugged. It didn't feel like a big deal. Just more blood samples, more microscopes, more data entry. The only difference was the extra security badge he now carried and the non-disclosure agreement he'd signed. After lunch, Nathan headed to his doctor's appointment. The annual physical was nothing special, just the usual poking and prodding, blood pressure check, and blood draw. Dr. Rivera frowned slightly as he looked at Nathan's chart. "Your blood work from last time showed some unusual markers. Probably just lab error, but I'd like to run those tests again." "Unusual how?" Nathan asked, feeling a twinge of worry. "Nothing concerning, just some protein structures we don't typically see. Like I said, probably just contamination in the sample." The needle slid into Nathan's arm, and he looked away. For someone who worked with blood all day, he still couldn't stand the sight of his own. When it was over, he pressed the cotton ball to his arm and waited for the Band-Aid. As he walked back to work, Nathan noticed the sky had cleared. The sun felt unusually warm on his face, the colors of the street somehow brighter than before. He blinked, wondering if he needed new contacts. That night in his apartment, Nathan noticed the small cut on his finger from the morning, when he'd sliced it opening a package, had already healed completely. No scab, not even a mark. He shrugged it off. Things were finally looking up. For the first time in months, he fell asleep quickly, dreaming of stars and open skies and possibilities he couldn't quite remember in the morning. 2 weeks after his physical, Nathan worked late at the lab. The main lights were dimmed, leaving only the blue glow of computer screens and the safety lights illuminating his workspace. He enjoyed the quiet of night shifts. No Kyle hovering, no forced small talk in the break room. Tonight, he was handling samples from Project Stardust, a classified government research initiative. Nathan didn't know much about it, only that the samples required special handling protocols and separate storage units. He carefully extracted a dark, viscous substance from a sealed container marked with warning labels and a series of codes. The liquid seemed to shimmer under the light, almost as if it contained tiny particles that caught and reflected the glow. Not like normal blood at all. "Sample SX7, Nathan mumbled to himself, making a note in the system. He reached for a clean pipette, his movements precise after years of practice. Then it happened. The building's emergency generator kicked on as the lights flickered, startling Nathan. His hand jerked, and the sample tube tilted. At the same time, the edge of his latex glove caught on the sample tray, tearing open. A drop of the strange substance splashed onto his exposed skin, mixing with a small cut on his finger that he hadn't even noticed before. Damn it! Nathan grabbed a sterilizing wipe, quickly cleaning the area. The safety protocols flashed through his mind. Report the exposure immediately. Fill out an incident form. Get medical clearance. But as he wiped his finger, he noticed something odd. The spot where the substance had touched his blood seemed to glow for a moment, a brief flash of blue light that disappeared as quickly as it came. Nathan froze, staring at his finger. Had he imagined it? He looked at the security camera in the corner of the lab. If he reported this, there would be an investigation. Paperwork, probably a suspension while they ran tests. He needed this job. Nathan finished cleaning up, sealed the remaining sample, and decided to wait. If he developed any symptoms, he'd report it then. Otherwise, no one needed to know about a minor accident with no apparent consequences. The next morning, Nathan woke feeling strangely energized. His usual need for coffee wasn't there. Colors seemed brighter, sounds clearer. On his walk to work, he could hear conversations from across the street, as if people were standing next to him. "You're looking chipper today," Olivia commented when they met in the elevator. "Just slept well," Nathan replied, not mentioning that he'd only slept 3 hours yet felt more rested than ever. By afternoon, Nathan noticed more changes. He accidentally knocked over a cup of hot coffee, his hand moving with unexpected speed to catch it before it spilled. In the bathroom mirror, he saw that his eyes looked different. The brown irises now had flecks of gold that hadn't been there before. That night, a knock on his apartment door startled him. When he opened it, he found Lucy Winters, a researcher he'd seen around the building but never spoken to. "May I come in?" she asked, her voice low and urgent. "We need to talk about what happened in the lab last night." Nathan felt his heart race. "I don't know what you're talking about." Lucy's eyes narrowed. "The security footage was flagged and deleted this morning by someone with high-level clearance. They're coming for you, Nathan. I'm not with them." "Who's coming? Who are you?" "There's no time. Pack a bag. They've identified the anomaly in your blood work from 2 weeks ago. The accident last night just confirmed what they suspected." Lucy glanced over her shoulder. "You're changing, Nathan, and some very powerful people want to know why." As if to prove her point, a black SUV pulled up outside his apartment building. Nathan peered through the blinds at the black SUV. 2 men in dark suits stepped out, their movements precise and purposeful. "How did you know about my blood work?" Nathan asked, turning back to Lucy. "I work in data security. I noticed the flags on your file," she replied while pulling his backpack from the closet. "Pack quickly, essentials only." Nathan hesitated, then grabbed clothes, his wallet, and phone charger. His mind raced with questions, but the urgency in Lucy's voice convinced him to move now and ask later. "There's a back door through the laundry room," he said, zipping the bag closed. They slipped out just as a firm knock sounded at the front door. Nathan led Lucy down the service stairs, his heart pounding. The laundry room was empty, the hum of machines masking their footsteps as they moved toward the exit. "Stop right there, Mr. Foster." A tall man with a crew cut stood blocking the back door, his hand resting inside his jacket. Agent Daniel Crawford, according to the badge he flashed. "We just need to talk. It's about your health and safety." Nathan felt a strange sensation, like electricity running under his skin. Something about Crawford's voice rang false in his ears. He could almost feel the lie. "I don't think so," Nathan replied, surprised by the steadiness in his own voice. Crawford moved forward. "This isn't optional. You've been exposed to a classified substance." Lucy stepped between them. "He knows his rights. You have no detention order." Crawford's eyes narrowed. "Ms. Winters, didn't expect to find you here. Your employers will be interested to know about this interference." The tension in the room shifted. Nathan sensed Crawford reaching for something, a weapon, and reacted without thinking. His hand shot out, grabbing a full laundry basket and hurling it with impossible strength. The basket struck Crawford squarely in the chest, sending him stumbling backward into a washing machine. "Run!" Lucy shouted, pulling Nathan toward the exit. They burst into the alley behind the apartment building. Nathan heard shouts and saw more agents rounding the corner. "This way." Lucy pulled him toward a blue sedan parked half a block away. "Keys are under the seat." Nathan slid into the driver's side, finding the keys exactly where she said. As they pulled away, he caught sight of Crawford in the rearview mirror, speaking urgently into his wrist mic. "Head north," Lucy instructed. "There's a safe house in Greenwood." Nathan drove in silence for several minutes, his mind struggling to process everything. "Who are you really?" he finally asked. Lucy studied him before answering. "I'm part of a monitoring group called Celestial Watch. We track unusual phenomena related to non-terrestrial contact." "Non-terrestrial? You mean aliens?" Nathan almost laughed, but the serious look on her face stopped him. "That substance you were exposed to isn't from Earth, and your blood, it contains markers we've only seen in a handful of people throughout history." Nathan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "That's impossible." "Is it?" Lucy asked. "How's your hearing today? Your vision? Noticed any unusual strength or reflexes?" "The changes are just beginning." Nathan remembered catching the coffee cup, hearing conversations from across the street. The impossible strength he'd just shown with the laundry basket. "What's happening to me?" he whispered. "That's what we need to find out. Turn here." She pointed to an unmarked road leading into a wooded area. "My handler is waiting. She can explain better than I can." The safe house was a cabin tucked among tall pines. As they approached, an older woman with steel-gray hair stepped onto the porch. She held herself with military bearing, eyes sharp and assessing. "Nathan Foster," she said as they got out of the car. "I'm Eleanor Grant. I've been waiting a long time to meet someone like you." "Someone like me?" Nathan asked. Eleanor nodded. "Someone whose blood carries the stars." The cabin was simple but comfortable. A fire crackled in the stone fireplace, casting warm light across wooden walls covered with star charts and strange symbols. Nathan sat at a rough-hewn table, hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had long gone cold. Eleanor Grant paced the room, her movements efficient and purposeful. Celestial Watch was formed in 1947, after the Roswell incident, she explained. Not by the government, by scientists and military personnel who realized the truth needed protection from both sides. "Both sides?" Nathan asked. "Those who would deny all evidence of extraterrestrial contact, and those who would exploit it," Lucy clarified from her position by the window, where she kept watch. Eleanor nodded. "For decades, we've tracked bloodlines with certain genetic markers. Markers that aren't fully human." Nathan shook his head. "This is crazy. I'm just a lab tech who had an accident." "An accident that activated what was dormant in your DNA," Eleanor said. She pulled out a tablet and showed him two images side by side. Blood samples under microscope. "This is normal human blood. And this," she swiped to the next image, "is yours, taken from your physical 2 weeks ago." Nathan stared at the screen. The cells in the second image had strange structures within them, geometric patterns that seemed almost crystalline. "Your ancestors were part of an experiment," Eleanor continued. "Centuries ago, a spacefaring species called the Viridians visited Earth. They selected certain human bloodlines and modified them, introducing their own genetic material." "Why?" Nathan asked, his voice barely audible. "Evolution. Adaptation. Perhaps preparation," Lucy offered. "The Viridians are an ancient race. They seed genetic potential across galaxies, returning centuries later to observe the results." Eleanor sat across from Nathan, Most modified bloodlines show minimal changes, slightly enhanced intelligence, immunity to certain diseases. But occasionally, when exposed to specific catalysts, the dormant DNA activates fully. The sample in the lab, Nathan whispered. What was it? A compound found in a meteorite that crashed in Arizona 6 months ago, Eleanor said. Government scientists were studying it. They had no idea what they really had. Viridian biological material. Nathan ran his hands through his hair. So what happens now? What am I becoming? Eleanor's expression softened slightly. We don't know exactly. Each activation is unique. But based on historical records and the changes you're already experiencing, you're evolving into something beyond human. The government team, Crawford, they want me as a lab rat, Nathan stated flatly. Lucy nodded. The Stargate Division has been trying to weaponize extraterrestrial biology for decades. You're their dream come true. Nathan stood suddenly, needing to move. And what does Celestial Watch want with me? To protect you, Eleanor said, and to learn. The Viridians left markers in our ancient texts suggesting they would return when one of their seeds fully bloomed. Nathan felt a strange sensation at the base of his skull, a tingling that spread down his spine. Suddenly, he could feel the thoughts of the others in the room. Eleanor's cautious hope, Lucy's concern, and something else, a presence outside. Someone's here, he said, turning toward the door before the sound of approaching vehicles was audible. Eleanor and Lucy exchanged glances. How did they find us? Lucy whispered. Nathan touched his arm where the doctor had drawn blood. The physical. They must have put something in me during the blood draw. A tracker. The cabin's lights flickered. Nathan felt a surge of energy within him, like electricity gathering under his skin. Without understanding how, he sensed the positions of everyone outside. 6 people approaching, armed, spreading out to surround the cabin. Crawford, Eleanor confirmed, checking a small device from her pocket. We need to move. There's a tunnel under the floorboards in the bedroom. Nathan shook his head, a strange calm settling over him. No. I need to understand what I am. He looked at his hands, which had begun to emit a faint blue glow. And I think it's time they understood too. The cabin door burst open. Crawford entered first, flanked by 4 agents with weapons drawn. The 5th remained outside, covering the perimeter. End of the line, Foster, Crawford said, his voice cold. You're coming with us. Government property doesn't get to run away. Nathan stood in the center of the room, the blue glow around his hands now pulsing with his heartbeat. I'm not property. That's where you're wrong, Crawford replied. The genetic material in your blood belongs to the United States government. What it's doing to you is classified at the highest levels. Eleanor moved protectively toward Nathan, but he gestured for her to stay back. Something was happening inside him, a breaking down of barriers, a rush of understanding. Stand down, Grant, Crawford ordered. Your little watch group has no authority here. Nathan felt his perception expanding. He could sense the electrical impulses in Crawford's brain, the flow of blood through his vessels, the chemical reactions triggering his emotions, primarily fear, though Crawford hid it well. Nathan, Lucy whispered, your eyes. Nathan couldn't see himself, but he felt the change. The world had become a tapestry of energy patterns, flows and currents invisible to normal human sight. Crawford raised his weapon. Last chance. Come quietly or... Nathan raised his hand, not to threaten, but in a gesture of pause. The movement released a wave of energy that rippled through the room. Every electronic device sparked and died. The agents' weapons flew from their hands, clattering against the walls. Crawford staggered back, his expression changing from confidence to alarm. Containment Protocol Alpha. He shouted into his now-dead radio. Nathan hadn't meant to do any of it. The power had simply responded to his emotions, his desire to protect himself and the others. He looked at his hands in horror. I could have hurt them, he whispered. Lucy approached slowly. But you didn't. You controlled it. The agents regrouped around Crawford, uncertain. One reached for a backup weapon, but Nathan sensed the movement and looked in his direction. The man froze, hand halfway to his holster. "I want to understand what's happening to me," Nathan said to Crawford. "And I don't want to be a weapon or a lab specimen. Work with us, not against us." Crawford's laugh was bitter. "You think you have a choice? Look at yourself. You're exactly what we need in this arms race." "Arms race?" Eleanor stepped forward. "Against whom?" "Don't play dumb, Grant. Your watch group knows about the signals. The approaching vessels. We've been tracking them for months." Nathan felt a jolt of recognition, though he couldn't identify its source. Images flashed through his mind. Stars, vast ships, beams of light. Were these memories? Premonitions? "They're coming," he said softly. "The Viridians." Crawford's expression confirmed it. "In 14 days, they enter our solar system. And we'll be ready." "Ready for what?" "War," Lucy asked, incredulous. "Against a civilization advanced enough for interstellar travel." "We need to prepare," Nathan said, suddenly certain. He turned to Lucy. "You said Celestial Watch has records of previous activations. I need to see them. I need to understand what I'm becoming and why." "Not happening." Crawford took a step forward. "You're coming with us. Now." Nathan felt the energy building again, responding to the threat. This time, he tried to direct it, focusing it into a barrier between Crawford's team and themselves. A shimmering blue wall appeared, separating the room. Crawford's agents fired their backup weapons, but the bullets slowed and stopped in midair before dropping harmlessly to the floor. Nathan felt dizzy with the effort, but held the barrier. "We're leaving," he said to Lucy and Eleanor. "And they're not going to stop us." As they backed toward the bedroom and the escape tunnel, Nathan realized with both wonder and fear, this was just the beginning of what he could do. 3 days after the cabin confrontation, Nathan stood on the roof of an abandoned observatory outside Seattle. Eleanor had brought him here, one of Celestial Watch's oldest outposts, established in the 1950s. The facility below housed records of every suspected Viridian activation throughout human history. "There were only 7 documented cases before you," Lucy explained, joining him on the roof. "None progressed as quickly as you are." Nathan nodded, his eyes fixed on the night sky. Since yesterday, he could see far beyond what normal human vision allowed, past the visible stars to the swirls of distant galaxies. And somewhere out there, drawing closer, were the beings connected to his transformation. "I can feel them," he said quietly, "like a pull, a recognition." Lucy handed him a tablet showing news reports from around the world. Strange lights had been spotted over Tokyo, Rio de Janeiro, Cairo, and Sydney, perfect geometric formations moving in impossible patterns. "It's starting," Eleanor said, emerging from the stairwell. "Sooner than we expected." The 3 of them watched as a pinpoint of light appeared directly overhead, growing larger by the second. Unlike the erratic movement of satellites or the steady path of aircraft, this light moved with deliberate purpose. "Crawford and his team will be tracking this," Lucy warned. Nathan felt a strange calm settle over him. "Let them come." Both of them. Within an hour, 2 separate groups converged on the observatory. Government vehicles approached from the east, while the light from above resolved into a crystalline craft that hovered silently half a mile up. Nathan walked outside to the observation platform. The air around him shimmered with protective energy, a skill he had practiced and refined over the past days. Crawford emerged from the lead vehicle, accompanied by a dozen heavily armed agents and what appeared to be scientific personnel. "Foster," he called out, "stand down. We're taking control of this contact." Nathan ignored him, focusing instead on the craft above. He extended his awareness upward, sending a mental greeting, not in words, but in patterns of thought that felt strangely familiar. The response was immediate. A beam of soft blue light extended from the craft to the ground before him. Within the light stood a figure, humanoid but clearly not human. Tall and slender with iridescent skin that shifted colors like an oil slick under sunlight. Its eyes were large, completely black, but somehow warm. Nathan Foster, the being spoke, its voice like music in his mind rather than sound in his ears. I am Serene, emissary of the Viridian Collective. Crawford's team raised their weapons, but Nathan extended his barrier to include Serene, protecting them both. You know me, Nathan said, not a question but a statement. We know the pattern of your existence, Serene replied. You are the first successful bloom in 3,000 years of your planet's time. Behind him, Nathan heard Eleanor gasp. Lucy quickly began documenting everything on her tablet. Why? Nathan asked simply. Why seed Earth with your DNA? Serene's head tilted slightly. Evolution is the universe's art. We do not create, we cultivate. Thousands of worlds carry our genetic material, waiting for the right conditions to express itself. Nathan sensed Crawford moving closer, listening intently despite his hostility. We detected your activation, Serene continued. It signaled that humanity has reached a critical developmental stage. And now, Nathan asked, now we offer a choice. Join us in the collective as equals, or continue your independent evolution, with knowledge we can share. Crawford stepped forward. Any technology or knowledge belongs to Earth's governments, not to individuals. Serene turned to Crawford, studying him with those endless black eyes. That is not your decision to make, Daniel Crawford, nor is it ours. The being looked back at Nathan. It belongs to the bloom, to Nathan Foster, who carries both humanities within him. In that moment, Nathan understood the weight of what was happening. He wasn't just changing, he was becoming a bridge between two species, two evolutionary paths. As if punctuating this realization, lights appeared in skies worldwide, visible to everyone. The Viridians were making themselves known to all of humanity. The week that followed Serene's arrival was unlike anything in recorded human history. Viridian ships maintained positions above major cities, neither threatening nor retreating, simply present. Governments worldwide scrambled to respond, some with military posturing, others with diplomatic overtures. Through it all, Nathan remained at the center, his transformation continuing to evolve. He could now manipulate matter at the molecular level, communicate telepathically across vast distances, and perceive reality in ways that defied human language to describe. The UN Security Council is demanding answers, Lucy said, entering the conference room at the observatory that had become their headquarters. And Crawford's superiors have ordered him to bring you in by any means necessary. Nathan nodded, unsurprised. He stood gazing out the window at the crystalline Viridian ship hovering nearby. They're afraid. I understand that. Eleanor joined them, her tablet displaying news feeds from around the world. Fear is turning to panic in some regions. We need to act soon. Nathan turned to face them, his eyes now permanently altered, brown irises overlaid with geometric patterns that glowed softly in dim light. I've been communicating with Serene. We've reached a decision. Before he could continue, alarms blared throughout the facility. Security screens showed military helicopters approaching, along with ground forces surrounding the observatory. Crawford, Lucy said grimly. Nathan placed a hand on her shoulder. It's okay. This is part of the plan. He walked outside, where Crawford waited with a full tactical team. Behind them, news helicopters hovered, broadcasting live to a world hungry for answers. Nathan Foster, Crawford called through a megaphone. You are hereby ordered to surrender yourself and the alien visitors to United States custody. Nathan smiled slightly. Hello, Daniel. I was hoping you'd come. Crawford lowered the megaphone, confused by Nathan's calm demeanor. What game are you playing? No game, just the next step. Nathan raised his hand toward the sky. The Viridian ship descended slowly until it hovered just 50 feet above them. A section of its crystalline hull became transparent, revealing Serene and several other Viridians. People of Earth, Nathan spoke, his voice somehow carrying across the entire area without amplification. The Viridians aren't here to conquer or colonize. They're here because we called to them, not just through my activation, but through humanity's collective progress. Crawford stepped forward cautiously. What are you saying? I'm saying it's time for a new chapter. Nathan gestured, and the air between them shimmered, forming a three-dimensional projection of DNA strands intertwining. Viridian technology can solve our energy crisis, heal our environment, and advance our medicine beyond imagination. Nathan continued, but they won't simply give it to us. We have to earn it, prove we can use it wisely. And you decide this for all humanity. Crawford challenged. No, Nathan replied. I'm simply the translator. The choice belongs to all of us. Over the next hour, as the world watched, Nathan outlined the proposal he and Serene had crafted. A gradual sharing of knowledge, overseen by an international council with representatives from all nations. The Viridians would establish a permanent embassy on Earth, while humans would be invited to visit Viridian worlds. 6 months later, Nathan stood on the grounds of the newly established Viridian Human Cooperative Research Center. Where once the abandoned observatory had stood, now rose a gleaming facility dedicated to the responsible integration of Viridian knowledge into human society. Lucy approached, her smile warm. The first student exchange program launches next week. 20 humans will visit the Viridian homeworld. Nathan nodded, looking out at the bustling campus. And how's Crawford doing with his new assignment? Lucy laughed, still adjusting to being head of security for interspecies relations, but I think he's coming around. As they walked through the gardens, Nathan felt a familiar presence. He turned to find Serene approaching. Our scientists have completed the analysis, Serene said. Lucy Winters carries 3% Viridian DNA, a distant bloom, but enough to explain her intuitive connection to you. Lucy's eyes widened. I'm part Viridian. Nathan smiled. It explains a lot, doesn't it? How you always seemed to know what I was going through. As the sun set on the facility, Nathan watched researchers from both species working side by side. The path ahead would not be easy. Change never was. But for the first time since that fateful drop of blood changed everything, he felt truly at peace. He was neither fully human nor fully Viridian, but something new. A bridge between worlds, born from a single moment of cosmic chance, a drop of blood that had changed not just his fate, but the fate of two species forever.